Welcome back to LePodcast episode 89. As always, you're here with your host, Hoop and Sainey. How you doing, bro?
As always, you're here with your host. It feels like it's like deja vu every time I hear you say that.
Yeah, I'm kind of like locked in. It's just, it's mechanical at this point.
I'm doing good, man. I'm excited. We're finally getting back in the routine.
Do me a favor. Pull your mic a little away from your face.
My bad.
That was loud.
My bad. Thank you for addressing that. Is that good?
Of course. Yeah, that's fine. But,
all right, there we go.
Today's pod is on Tim Duncan, someone who really isn't like naturally a podcast topic because he played for a team with black and white jerseys. He is the most black and white player in NBA history.
And to his credit, that's still top 10 worthy.
And I think there's a genuine case for him to be like top 4. Hey, I didn't say top 3.
Case. No, that's just the first time I've ever heard somebody say those words.
There's a case.
I'm not hating it, especially after this. But this was, listen, I love Tim Duncan from the bottom of my heart. Please do not take any disrespect when I say this. This was by far the most boring research I've ever done in my life. Like, I'm not being rude when I say this.
Bro, this is supposed to be like the hype part of the pod where we engage the viewers to stay.
No, right. No. The research
is
fire.
Not a boring pod. This is not a boring
it's
pod.
A great. No. The great. Yeah.
It was just tough on us. It was just tough on us.
I meant boring as in like it took so long. Like, man, like he actually did a great job at hiding his life.
Hey man, this pod is gonna suck.
First minute in, it's like real quick before we start, as always, a quick shout out to everybody leaving the Q&A responses. We do that with every episode on Spotify, and if you're on Apple Podcasts, please leave us a rating, and if you're on YouTube, also leave us a comment. We read everything. We truly do. It's so dope to see you guys interact with us, and it gives us more of a connection with you guys. So if you have the extra second of your day, please make sure to rate us across all platforms. 5 stars. Subscribe to us on YouTube, comment, leave your suggestions on Spotify. We do also have polls. You literally just have to click a button. You answer questions that we give you guys and leave any responses, including constructive criticism. I mean, we love that as well because we like to improve anything we can. But without further ado, let's just jump in the episode.
Absolutely. Sorry, I was just laughing because I made a Kendrick Perkins TikTok the other day, and someone commented he is the DJ Khaled of the NBA. Sorry, I was cracking up. All right, Tim Duncan. Starting with the 1997 NBA draft. There's a lot of context that I'm going to give with how the Spurs got the pick. But as for the draft itself, I'll just rattle off the top 5. Since it's a little like further into history, a lot of our newer viewers are going to not really understand who these players are. But at 1, it was Tim Duncan to the Spurs. Then Philly had the second pick, took Keith Van Horn, who was real solid for the Nets. He got traded to New Jersey on draft night. Chauncey Billups was in Boston. Selected with the 3rd pick. He was also like traded almost immediately afterwards. He played a couple games with Boston. The Vancouver Grizzlies take Antonio Daniels, and Denver at 5 takes Tony Batty. Other notable players in the draft, since the top 5 was not very impressive. Tracy McGrady was taken at 9 by Toronto. Steven Jackson was at 43. And God Shamgod at 46, who played 20 NBA games for the Wizards. Shout out Shamgod. I love that move. I use it all the time. That's a go-to.
It's a hood classic right there.
God Shamgod is also an insane name. I just want to know what the parents were thinking. Or how he ended up with the last name Shamgod. But as far as like a Tim Duncan draft comparison goes, I found one. It's tougher to find when like the dudes are older because all these blogs are like the beginning of when computers were made. But Kevin LaChance says, in terms of comparisons, I have heard David Robinson and Brad Daugherty. I feel Hakeem Olajuwon is a closer comparison because of his mobility and size. Shout out Kevin, he was spot on. He also says, in terms of physical skills, Duncan has great mobility. He is capable of consistently beating his man down the court. He has long arms and excellent timing for blocking shots. His footwork on post moves is constantly improving. This guy, Kevin, is a dog. We say it every episode, but these scouts are killing it right now. In terms of basketball skills, Duncan has the total package. Duncan can score in a variety of ways. He can take his man down low with an assortment of post moves. He uses the glass well on his turnaround jump shot. He can also step outside and hit a mid-range jumper. Duncan's passing ability is incredible for a player his size and experience. he led Wake Forest in assists. Duncan handles the ball better than most post players. We got to do a draft bust episode. I keep saying it, but like these scouting
keep
reports
doing
are solid.
players, but we really should start doing other stuff. Like I want to do like a deep dive on the worst scouting reports.
That would just be because these guys are a little too correct. I'll give you a fun fact real quick. This is the last thing I have about the draft itself. Only 2 other NBA players in the history of the league have come from the U.S. Virgin Islands. I'm pretty sure Tim Duncan was St. Croix. I'm 99% sure. Raja Bell and Charles Claxton, who played for like a year, also were from the
Raja
Virgin
Bell
Islands.
is a household name.
Raja Bell played in the league for like 13 years, actually.
Yeah.
So shout out Raja Bell. But yeah, how the Spurs got the pick. This is very interesting. In 1996, they were a 60-win or 59-win team. Pop was not the coach. The coach was Bob Hill. They lost in the second round. D-Rob was obviously the man in charge. He averaged 25, 12, and 3 blocks. He was just an absolute unit. Some other pieces on the team, I don't know if y'all went back and played with like the early Spurs 2K teams. They had Vinny Del Negro, Avery Johnson, Sean Elliott, who was an all-star, Sean Elliott, and an older Chuck Person. They were like really good. Next year, though, D-Rob misses the first 18 games due to a back injury, and then shortly after, he broke his left foot and needed surgery. So they were still supposed to be a very serious team. Sean Elliott also only played 40 games because he had like tendonitis in his leg or something. D-Rob only played 6 games on the season. The Spurs were 20-62. You might be wondering, how are they so good and got the first overall pick? That's how. They were awful that season because everyone was hurt. What's even more interesting is that Bob Hill was fired 18 games into the season after going 3-15. Keep in mind, everyone's hurt. This is like a garbage squad he's playing with.
Right.
And the GM, Greg Popovich, took over his position. It's rumored that he always wanted to coach, but he just needed a reason to like step down. He's like, oh, you went 3-15? I'm going to slide right in there real quick.
Yeah. The media shunned him for it too.
Yes.
They were calling him like egotistical and stuff.
Yes. I thought that was very interesting.
Yeah.
So I wrote here, Spurs fans were furious because Bob Hill had been so successful, leading them to like 60-win seasons.
Yeah.
And the Spurs were battling injuries, so it just made no sense that he would be fired for poor performance or whatever. Shout out Dominique Wilkins. He was 37 in charge of the tank, averaged 18 points per game on 41% shooting. I love tank commanders. That is such a fun job. Sorry, I just had to say that. I also forgot Dominique was on the Spurs, but that's a fun time. So shout out Dominique for landing Tim Duncan for them. Now we go to the rookie season for Timmy. He is like immediately dominant. I know last time with Melo, we said how when he first arrived to the Nuggets, the record from the year before was like one of the biggest margins in history. I don't know what that margin was exactly. I'm forgetting. But the Spurs went on to win 56 games this season from 20. Now, obviously, D-Rob is back healthy. And Sean Elliott, who was an all-star in 96, is now only averaging 9 points per game instead of 20. So you're getting D-Rob, but Duncan is providing a huge impact. They're pretty much 1A, 1B off the jump. Tim averaged 21, 12, and 2.5 blocks. Something the Spurs have always done in Tim's career is played Twin Towers for the most part.
I was just going to say Twin Towers.
But these guys were like ridiculous. Tim ran away with Rookie of the Year, All-Star his first year, and in his first playoff game, which I'm pretty sure was away against Phoenix, he put up 32 and 10. Pretty crazy. They lost to the Utah Jazz his rookie year. This was the team that went on to play Michael Jordan in 98. They lost to them in 6 in the second round of the playoffs. It's so funny to think of like people you think of modern players playing against those older teams. Like I completely forgot Tim Duncan was around when Jordan was still in the league. Like you just don't correlate the two.
You don't think about that.
I never think about that. So because I saw the Jazz and I was like, oh, playing Darren Williams and Carlos Boozer. I was like, what am I talking about? Like that's just the era I associate them with.
Darren Williams.
I had to look
That's
that
so
up.
true. Now that I think about it, the oldest Jazz team I think of is Darren Williams Jazz. I don't think about John Stockton, bro.
I never think of Stockton and Duncan.
Who's the best point guard to play for the Jazz? Oh, Darren Williams. Ricky Rubio had a couple good seasons.
Rubio was tough. Now going into his second year, Tim is a force at this point. The Spurs started off, this is a shortened season, at a record of 6-8. Remember, they won 56 games the prior year.
Right.
There's a story out there that Greg Popovich, well, not a story, it's actually true because players have confirmed it. Greg Popovich was one more loss away from being replaced by Doc Rivers. Doc, at the time, was a fan favorite as a TV broadcast announcer for the Spurs. That's the reason he's getting hired for ESPN, because he actually has a history in broadcast. The game to win, to keep his job, I think me and you have talked about this, Sainey, not the fact that he played him, but the 99 Houston Rockets, how good they were together. That team had Hakeem, Charles Barkley, and Scottie Pippen. Yeah. And they were all playing that night. This was like a team that was really good, and they were messed up by injuries. The Spurs had to beat this team to keep
fully healthy.
Popovich fully healthy. This is a quote from Avery Johnson. Things had been communicated to us. It was really real. There was a lot of noise about Pop being potentially replaced by Doc. So David Robinson and I went to Pop's house before we got on a flight to go to Houston. Pop talked to us, and what I will say is we came out there feeling so strongly about Pop, we knew we had to go win that game. Now, the Spurs, they go to Houston. They win that game 99-82. So Pop keeps his job. It's so crazy, the fact that like the man led a dynasty and he was about to lose his job to Doc Rivers.
Right.
But they, hold up. Not only did they win Houston, they went on to win 18 of their next 20 games. They finished the shortened season with a 37-13 record, and they won the NBA Finals.
And
while only losing 2 games in the playoffs.
It was a league best 37 wins, by the way. League best 37 wins.
Is that not a wild story?
I want to ask you something real quick. Because I'm thinking of a banter question right on the spot. What did the Spurs look like with Doc Rivers as their head coach?
Oh, Lord.
From the jump. Like, think about it.
I can't. Like, what does Tim Duncan look like?
What does Tim Duncan look like?
I have no idea, bro. I have no. That is like, wow.
Yeah.
But in that finals, I mean, Tim was the clear number one option. He brought home the Finals MVP second season. He beat the 8 seed Knicks while averaging 27 and 14. Tim was also third in MVP voting in like a really closely contested year. It still blows my mind that Karl Malone has 2 MVPs. I just never link more than one MVP to his name.
Right.
But Malone won that year with 827 votes. Alonzo Mourning had 773 votes, and Tim had 740. So the difference was less than 100 points between first and third. So right. I mean, if they knew what they knew when Tim was winning it, I'm sure he could have walked away with something. But it's crazy. Like, he was that good going into, and this was not even close to his best year. I mean, 03, he was absolutely ridiculous.
Right.
Now, the last thing to let's kind of like ramp up to the start of what we know is the Spurs dynasty.
Right.
Before Parker and Ginobili take board, it's the 2000 season. D-Rob at this point is taking a step back offensively. I'm forgetting how old he was. He was early 30s, or maybe like 33, something like that.
Yep.
They won 53 games. The Spurs were still great in the 78th game of the season. Obviously, coming off a championship, they were expected to do really well. Duncan tore his lateral meniscus, and Pop held him out for the playoffs, even though Tim Duncan was running around in practice and wanted to play. There was something like some extra cartilage, I think they said, that was flapping around in his leg, so Pop decided to hold him out. And because of no Duncan, the Spurs lost in 5 to like the Penny Hardaway Suns or something like that. And the Suns lost to the Lakers, who were just starting their dynasty.
Right.
What was interesting about this is that the Lakers in 99, so the year before, got swept by the Spurs.
Right.
And they really dodged a bullet in 2000 by not having to play them. They win a chip. Now Kobe and Shaq like each other.
I don't know if I agree with that.
I mean, Phil Jackson was
because in 2001 and 2002, the Spurs played the Lakers both times in the playoffs, and they lost in 4 games and then 5.
The only reason why that's not too concerning for me is because D-Rob was much older then. And this
it was only a season after, though.
You said
in 2000 they dodged a bullet.
You said like 04.
No, I said 01 and 02. The 01 playoffs and the 02 playoffs, the Spurs played the Lakers back to back.
Even if it's just a single season, I'm just saying it's a possibility because the Lakers.
It's a possibility for sure, but I wouldn't call it dodging a bullet.
Because
in '99 that was the first season. No, the Lakers' first season together was in which Kobe and Shaq, right? Was that '98?
You could look that up, but I know their first season with Phil Jackson was 2000. And I'm saying if they didn't win that chip, maybe it takes another year for them to ramp up. Because when you come off a chip with an already like solidified all-time great coach and like two really core players, then you really have a team in place. I'm wondering if they get beat by the Spurs again. I mean, the Spurs are definitely a bullet. The reigning champs, that's definitely a bullet they have to dodge. I don't know if they would have lost, but it would have been a lot more difficult than, say, the Suns or whatever. But let's say if if the Spurs win in 7, like that could derail, not entirely, but the Lakers really might not start this dynasty that they ended up. Like, I don't know if Shaq and Kobe, whatever happens with them. But basically, the Spurs, like Tim Duncan's injury could have impacted the league as far as the Lakers starting their dynasty.
No, I agree. But I think my point was, like, you made it seem like, because they got swept in 99, like in 2000. Because in 01 and 02, like the Lakers did destroy the Spurs.
I was saying that because it was like the Spurs have beat them in the past. So like to say that they wouldn't do it again is like, it's definitely a bullet.
No, for sure.
But that's all I got as far as like the early years.
Right.
Now we get into like MVP, Timmy.
Right, and that's and like I just kind of went over, like after the 2000 season, obviously in 01 and 02, they get back to the playoffs, they have their regular season success, right? But Kobe and Shaq just destroyed the Spurs back-to-back years. Again, they get swept in 01, they lose in 5 in 2002. But in 2002, Timmy walked away with his first MVP. First of 2, I believe.
2.
But here's the thing that changes here, and here's where the Spurs start their dynasty. Now, I would honestly argue that their dynasty started in 99 when their championship, when they kind of brought a ring over, because when you look at it from 99 to 07, they won like 4 rings. But I don't hate the fact that people call the start of the dynasty when obviously these 2 overseas players, one Frenchman and another Argentinian boy, come over, obviously, right? So in 99, the Spurs drafted Ginobili with the 57th pick, but he didn't come over to play. He stayed in Italy for the first 3 seasons, and then they brought him over in 02. And Tony Parker, he was also drafted by them. And now you kind of have this young backcourt developing to kind of assist Tim Duncan, because as you said, D-Rob's getting older. He can't really carry the load that he once could carry, and it wasn't like a 1A, 1B situation anymore. It was clearly the Tim Duncan show. With these additions, the Spurs go on to win 60 games, and Timmy goes on to win his second straight MVP. The Spurs also took care of the Lakers in the playoffs after getting bounced out by them in 01 and 02, taking them down in 6 games. And Duncan had a ridiculous stat line against Shaq, 28 I have the stats here, 28 points per game, 11.8 rebounds per game, 4.8 assists per game, 1.3 blocks per game on 52.9%. And then he would go on to lead the Spurs to their second finals appearance in 5 years. Obviously, they go on, they win that series, and Duncan collects his second finals MVP. And in that finals run, he put up 24.2, 17 rebounds per game, 5.3 blocks per game, and a steal per game. This was also David Robinson's last season. He retired right after this. They even announced his retirement during the whole trophy thing. They said thank you to him, whatever. And it showed to be an issue within the Spurs rotation because they had the whole Twin Tower setup going on, right? And now there's just kind of this hole within the lineup because obviously you don't have that big man besides Tim Duncan. And then the Spurs would go on to lose to the Lakers in 6 the following season in 04. The Spurs would go on to fill in that hole with David Robinson leaving. I know, Hoop, you said you were going to go into more specifics with that, so I kind of want to
Rasho Nesterovic.
Yeah, I kind of want to go over it a little bit. Again, I don't want to go into too much detail because Hoop said he had a bunch of stuff on that. But I will say this. In 05, they go back and they face the reigning champions, the Detroit Pistons, which was, in my opinion, their hardest finals matchup at the time. I mean, obviously you can argue the Miami days, but we'll get into that later. And they took the Pistons to 7 games. And they won in a Game 7, 81 to 74. Apologies. And they win their 3rd title in 7 seasons. Tim Duncan, once again, wins the Finals MVP. It's his last Finals MVP of his career. But he was, at the time, the 4th player in NBA history to win the award 3 or more times. And in the following season, Tim Duncan goes on to lead the Spurs to their franchise best 63 wins, but they lost to the Mavs in 7 games when the playoffs came around. And this is the trend with the Spurs. It's just win-lose. There is no real story. There is no like, oh, there was this going on. It's either win or lose, and then just go into the offseason and
they either beat or get beaten.
Yeah, like there's actually like it's hilarious. My finger's bleeding, by the way. I cut myself somehow during this episode.
Shake hands and go home.
So I've been like trying to like cover up a cut this whole episode, but YouTube, don't ban us. I'm kind of just going over like records and just postseason drugs.
I got more.
And then knowing that you went into more specific with the 04 to the 07 stuff, which is what I have. It's win-lose in a black and white jersey. And it's 60 win season. Oh, we lost to the Mavericks. Okay. Oh, first seed. Oh, we lost to the 8th seeded Grizzlies. Okay.
It's like, so wild that because they did lose to Zebo went dummy on the Spurs one time.
Yeah.
But it's just like they're 50 wins because he has I don't know how many. I think it was just the one time in Tim Duncan's entire career where he didn't win 50 games, and that was the shortened season.
That was a short season, and they were on pace to win.
And not to mention, well, they won the NBA Finals that year.
They were on pace to win the 50 wins. I mean,
yeah, and not to mention these are not like 50, 51. Like most of them are like 58, like 57 win seasons.
I'm pretty sure the only time it was like a 50 win was 2011, but that was like the hardest Western Conference ever.
Yeah,
like the Thunder had 50 wins with the 8th seed. Like every team in the Western Conference had 50 wins. Like it was just like everybody was just close in talent. But that was like the closest you'll get to them not hitting 50 wins.
And just throughout, like the fact that it's the same 3 dudes with the same coach, just repping them out, like it was a machine, man.
And then you throw in Gary Neal every now and then, like it's a weird problem. This was what I mean by like the research was so hard because
I don't know how they didn't get bored.
Yeah, like like it was the perfect situation of 3 guys who were so unselfish and so intertwined, like invested in each other in terms of like playing winning basketball.
Well, Steven Jackson would say something about that as I get into this point. Now, I'm going to kind of go over my part of the 04 to 07 thing. It's the 3 rings in 5 years. I consider the dynasty to start in 03, only because I don't really consider D-Rob his prime or his 1A, 1B chip with Duncan to be that intertwined with Parker and Ginobili. But you could definitely, the Spurs were still down in that time.
Yeah, right.
But to replace D-Rob, I said it before, but Rasho Nesterovic, I'm not trying to dog on him. I think it was more so just Pop wanted a big body that's going to listen to him, that can low-key pass and do like a high-low with Duncan, like on the low, not really shoot, and then just play serviceable defense. All the Spurs bigs, for the most part, racked up blocks. Tim was the 4 and was averaging 2.5. And then I'm pretty sure Rasho had a year where he was averaging 2. So they kept the whole Twin Towers thing. And they replaced, this is in 04, they replaced Steven Jackson, who was the small forward on the 03 team, for Hedo Turkoglu. Now, Steven Jackson, he's obviously the big podcast guy. He came out and like kind of flamed the Spurs because he had, I don't know if he had beef with Tony Parker, but he, this is what he said about Tony Parker in 03. Tony Parker was getting cooked by every point guard that year, Jackson said. Speedy Claxton saved us, who was the backup. I don't know why they don't talk about Speedy Claxton and give him his props, bro. Tony Parker was near the bench every 4th quarter because Stephon Marbury was frying him. Jason Kidd was frying him. He also says, I know the type of person Tony is. Great player, going to go down in the Hall of Fame, but he's very selfish. He's been selfish. We would have had more championships and more success if it wasn't for him being so selfish. So that's what Steven Jackson says about Tony Parker. I know, we got some beef in the Spurs, right? Shout out Stack. Shout
out Stack.
That year in 04, the Spurs lost to the Lakers in the second round. What I found interesting, now I'm not trying to attribute Tony Parker, his shot selection or his shot volume, to his selfishness, because obviously Pop can control his team. So if Tony was not supposed to shoot this much, then whatever. But in 04, the shot distribution in the regular season went from Duncan with 17 shots, Parker with 12, and Ginobili with 10. That was kind of the layout for the whole regular season, who got shots. In the postseason, Duncan got 16 a game. Parker got 17 a game. He went from 12 to 17. He jumped Tim Duncan. He's shooting more than Tim Duncan in the playoffs. And Ginobili had 9. And what's interesting is that the year they won, the year prior, Duncan was still getting 17, Parker with 14, Ginobili with 7. So Tony Parker's volume is increasing. And I am the first person to say that Tony Parker was underrated and he was a really good scorer. He was a dog in the playoffs a bunch of years. The inefficiencies that people like to point out, I mean, they were playing at a garbage time of basketball that were ruled by defenses. So someone who can penetrate like he can and throw up a nice like little floater, it wasn't really about the percentages as it is today. All that to say, Parker was actually like the main offensive catalyst a bunch of times throughout his time with Tim Duncan. And I'm not trying to attribute that to his selfishness. I don't know if Stack is coming from that point. But it is a little weird to me that with how dominant Tim Duncan was, that he's not shooting more than Tony Parker. That's all I'm going to say. This is like an 04 I'm talking about.
Hey,
and then
shout out Tony.
Shout out Tony Parker. I mean, hey, bro, just trying to get his. You feel me?
Yeah, like,
man,
I
screw that. I'm trying to get myself in the hall.
You already there, Tim.
Yeah, and Parker was 21 years old when he was doing this. He averaged 18 and 7 in those playoffs. They got wiped by the Lakers, but shout out Tony Parker. In 2005, Ginobili is the starter of every game this regular season. People don't realize that Ginobili did start for a few seasons, like pretty regularly. And he wasn't asked to come off the bench until I got like that solid, like Danny Green. I think another year they had, forgetting. I'll remember later because I wrote it all
like
down.
Danny, like they had a bunch of like depths with like Danny Green.
It would be
Gary
someone
Neal,
who fits that spot where it's
Gary
like
Neal, Gary Green, yeah.
3 and D2, and then they have like the more dynamic Ginobili come off the bench and play more minutes.
Exactly.
But that's kind of what it was.
Yeah.
In 05, Nesterovic and Nazi Muhammad, who I'm pretty sure played for your Thunder, right?
Nazir Muhammad, and he also played for the Bulls, I think, right after.
He played for a lot of teams. He played till he was like 42. I'm pretty sure. But he
had beef with LeBron. You remember him and LeBron beef when LeBron was on Miami? He was on the Bulls.
I don't remember that.
I think they got in a scuffle. Yeah, I'm gonna look that up. But you continue.
All right. But basically, there was a point in time where Nazi Muhammad was like the other twin tower to Tim Duncan. And I'm not trying to say that as if like, they're just looking for a big body to throw down, but they're low key just looking for a big body to throw down there. That's like coachable. You feel me? Like they just need a 7-footer who's going to roam around there with Duncan. In 05, the Spurs beat the Nuggets. They beat the Sonics. They beat the Suns. And then they beat the Pistons in 7. What's interesting about Game 7 is Duncan shot 10 for 27 from the field. He still ended up with 25 and 11. But Ginobili was the true Game 7 hero. I mean, Duncan was better throughout the series, but he had 23, 5, and 4 on 8 for 13 shooting. Shout out Manu Ginobili. Dog.
I just pulled up the clip. It's in Game 3 of the 2013 playoffs. LeBron like pushed Nasir Muhammad to the ground. He gets up and he just bodies LeBron, and LeBron goes flying, like fell on his butt. Like I don't know if he flopped. Like it looks like a flop. Like he just pushed him, and he just flew. I just wanted to bring that up.
All right. So 06. This is what Sainey was talking about when they lost to the Mavs just randomly. In Game 7, Tim had 41, 15, and 6. Dirk had 37 and 15. What's so interesting about this season is that Tim Duncan is 29 years old. For someone who was the greatest power forward of all time to be 29, this is when like you're in your element. You might not be in your physical prime as mobile, but this is the time where like, it's winning time. Now it's time to pile
like
up
your
rings.
IQ.
Your IQ is up there. You're basically having your best seasons as far as like scoring volume and whatnot. This was the first time in his career where he was below 20 points per game. Parker and Ginobili were aging. Parker averaged 19, more than Tim Duncan, and was a first-time All-Star. Ginobili averaged 15 and was still starting at this point. But Tim just really did not care about his stats whatsoever. The thing is, I've heard a lot of people say that Tim Duncan, because of his lack of scoring and his lack of dominance, it kind of pushes him down this all-time rank because he was incapable of doing it. It's like, oh, you didn't really choose to do that.
That's cap.
And the reason I say that is because in that Mavs series, Tim Duncan averaged 32. I said he had 41 a game. So he averaged 32 a game. Someone who's a normal dude who's averaging 18 points in the regular season does not do that.
And also, by the way, he averages 18 points. The Spurs, again, had a franchise best 63 wins at the time that season. Like,
and he's
it's
one
contributing
of the best
to winning
defensive
basketball
anchors of all time.
Exactly. It's like the Spurs, and people don't understand how slow the pacing was for the Spurs. They played a very slow offense. They played a very slow game in general, and they were obviously defensive
they had
anchors.
to wait for Rasho to run down the court, dog.
Yeah, dog. Like they were averaging like actually, you know what? While you talk, I'm gonna pull up the Spurs at like how much points they average per game. Yeah, and everything.
Look up,
it's slow.
The pace. Look it up like relative to the league too. But it is wild that I mean, someone who usually averages 18 points per game is not putting up 32 in a must-win series. Duncan did. They
were 14th in the league in points per game, and they were below 100 points per game. They had 98 points per game. Like, of course,
the error was just very slow.
Exactly. No, but like when people talk about, he didn't want to score dominance, because they look at like his like people like Kobe who like were around him in the same era. But like,
yeah.
Like,
hey, I'll defend Tim Duncan till the death of me, bro.
Yeah, that's ridiculous.
Now I just want to get into 07 before we kind of go into the boring part of his career where they were just winning a bunch of games and losing in the playoffs.
Yeah.
Nazim Muhammad and Rasho Nesterovic, the other Twin Towers, were replaced by Fabricio Oberto and Francisco Elson. You want to talk about just bodies, like just sitting in the paint. It was literally the format to win 60 games. Like they won 58 games this season. Yeah. And they started Fabricio Oberto.
Hey, household name in San Antonio.
That year they beat the Nuggets, the Suns, the Jazz, and then LeBron's Cavs in the finals. That roster, by the way, was Boobie Gibson. I'm talking about the Cavs.
Boobie?
I don't know. No, his name is Daniel.
Boobie. Whose name is Boobie?
It was his nickname, Boobie Gibson. Sasha Pavlovich.
Oh, I remember Sasha. That was the guy that played on the Lakers.
No, that's right? Vujicic.
Oh, Vujicic. Oh, my God.
Vujicic is a Knicks legend, too.
Yeah.
LeBron, Drew Gooden, Zydrunas Ilgauskas.
No, Zydrunas was good.
No,
he was the one good player of that roster.
I just like saying it. I just like saying it.
Yeah. But like you said it like it was like no, he was good. He was a legend.
And Larry Hughes was also very solid for that team, but he only played 2 games in the finals.
Mo Williams was on that roster as well, right?
On that roster, I don't think so. Was he?
Yeah, I think Mo Williams.
07? Was he an All-Star that year?
Let me check. I mean, I'll look that up while you do your thing.
Yeah. In that finals though, Tony Parker won Finals MVP. He went just straight up.
He wasn't there. My bad.
I was about to say.
Yeah, he came 2 seasons after. My bad.
If he got Mo Williams and he's not winning the finals,
LeBron. Yeah, Mo Williams was good.
He's on
an underrated career. It's an underrated career.
No, anyway, like on a real note, like when we do a LeBron pod, I can't believe I'm doing it on the podcast, but like we do, his Cavs years are so overprotected. Those dudes they put around him.
Mo Williams was tough.
They were not this Shaq and Kobe, but that was a serviceable roster. He did not drag them out.
Mo Williams was Kyrie before Kyrie. He was Kyrie before Kyrie.
He didn't drag them out the complete mud. Like they had a little step. But
I'm so happy they brought Mo Williams back for the ring.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's Tim Duncan. My bad.
Tony Parker won the Finals MVP. He averaged 25 points per game on 57% shooting and 57% from 3. He averaged 20 points per game on 45% shooting the first 3 rounds. So Parker just kind of went dummy, got the Finals MVP, which is cool. I don't think Tim cared at all. Tim was the best player in the playoffs, though. Those first 3 series where Parker was 20 a game on 45% shooting, Timmy was 23, 12, and 3 blocks. Just classic Tim Duncan.
I want to bring up, actually, this is related to Tim Duncan. Like you said, I don't think he cared when Tony Parker won the Finals MVP. Have you ever seen the Spurs celebration after they won their first ring? Like Tim Duncan's celebration when they won their first ring?
No.
They're on the plane, and there's a photo of this. They're on the plane, the Spurs, and there's 4 dudes, and they're sitting. And
you're talking about the
they all have their laptop. Yeah, they all have their laptops out, and the Larry O'Brien trophy, you can see it in the bottom right corner, like half of it's there. They're not sitting by it; it's like away from them.
Yeah,
and they're all playing StarCraft. The night they won, The night they won, the trophy is barely like their photo. The trophy isn't even. You can see like the gold ball in the bottom right corner, and they're all just playing StarCraft.
I really think we're going to be talking about. I don't want to say the Nuggets, but Nikola Jokic like this when he's done with his career.
Yeah, like what? No, I know it's gonna be easier because he's in a more media heavy. Like, bro, they got him like like they're not catching Tim Duncan like like I saw him celebrate more for his horse racing.
Yeah.
But real quick, are you done with the 07 season? Because there's something I want to bring up about that 07 season.
That's all I got. Yeah.
Because I want to talk about the playoff run because there's some controversy, and this is one of like the only times there was controversy with the Spurs in a series. It has to do with that Sun series. You know what I'm talking about?
Can you remind me?
So the Spurs, obviously, they go up against the Suns, and this was supposed to be a good series, obviously, right? Because it's two teams that completely are opposite from each other. With the, obviously the famous D'Antoni 7-second offense, and then the slow grit grind Spurs, right? But I think Game 4, Robert Horry drops his shoulder on Steve Nash, sends him flying, and then Amari Stoudemire and Boris Diaw get suspensions for coming off the bench because Steve Nash gets thrown into the broadcast, where they show the ads on the court. Yeah. He gets thrown into that. And then Amari Stoudemire and Boris Diaw obviously get up because there's a fight that breaks out. And there's a whole controversy about how they both got suspended, which the Spurs just took care of business in Game 5 against the Suns and just ran with that momentum and beat them in 6. So do you think that the Suns, without facing any suspension, could have beat the Spurs in 2007? Because there's a reality because it was I think it was a tied series up until that point. It was a good series. And they took out Steve Nash. Bro, Robert, have you ever seen that thing of Robert Horry just bodying Steve Nash?
I don't think so.
Go look that up, bro. Go look up Robert Horry drops the shoulder on Steve Nash. If the editors are listening through the episode, if we could somehow play the clip of that right now, that would be amazing for YouTube. It's infamous, bro. You'll know it when you see it.
Was he bloody after that?
I think that was maybe it
might
be a
Steve Nash was bloody 3 different times.
Yeah. It wasn't
have you seen the picture where his entire mouth was bleeding?
Is destroyed.
No, his mouth, and he was smiling.
Oh yeah,
that is one of the coldest NBA photos of all time. Steve Nash is part of 2 of them. He's got that, and he's also got the one as a coach where he's hugging KD after that performance. Those are 2 of the hardest NBA photos of all time. Steve Nash is in both of them.
But yeah, man, Robert Horry hip checked Steve Nash. And it's bad.
All right, so
he bodies him, and he throws him in, and then Amari Stoudemire and Boris Diaw get suspensions that series.
Because Steve Nash is he really should have been in more contention for a finals right his time with the Suns. But can you talk about this boring stuff? Well, not boring stuff. Stay on the pod. But can you spice up these years just so I could watch that video real quick?
The postseason drought.
Yeah. I'm all done with that segment.
Okay, perfect. Following the last championship, wait, you want me to spice up the postseason drought or your segment? I'm so confused now.
I'm saying do your segment. Don't make it boring. Don't make it
bad. No, it's not boring. Don't keep listening. So obviously following their time at 07, they come off a ring. The Spurs go through a postseason drought, even though they would play winning basketball during the regular season. Now I want to make this very clear. Postseason drought means a completely different thing for the Spurs than for 99% of other NBA teams. By postseason drought, it's so we were used to them every 2-3 seasons they're in the finals. They went 4 or 5 seasons not being in the finals, right? And that's a big drought when it comes to San Antonio. In 2008, the Spurs core started to show signs of aging. Duncan was entering his 30s. He was starting to show that he couldn't handle the load, that he was once able to handle in the 2000s. And you can see that reflect on his career because right after the 2007...
What? I was just trying to watch the video. I didn't hear all that.
Wait, listen.
You want me to hear you out? That was great. I just saw the hip check. That was wild.
Yeah.
But anyway. He threw him.
But anyway, so Duncan obviously is entering his 30s, and if you kind of look at his stat sheet as well, season by season, you'll notice after the 2007 championship, Duncan never averaged 20 points per game ever again in his career. So clearly he was regressing. It wasn't a huge regression, but he was clearly starting to regress. And you can even see it in his minutes. Pop started playing him less minutes, and I think 5 of the last 9 seasons he played, he played under 30 minutes per game. The Spurs supporting cast was also falling out of their prime, and Popovich made the decision to give younger guys more minutes, such as Thiago Splitter, Gary Neal, Danny Green, Patty Mills. He was shifting the focus clearly to the younger talent, which led Tim Duncan and the Spurs obviously not seeing any postseason success for the next few seasons. Also, I believe in 2010, Ginobili went down with an injury in the last game of the season. And when that big three's not there, especially with that old San Antonio roster around them, they weren't going to see much success. And then also the infamous Zebo demolishing Spurs.
Yo, he went.
He went.
You guys gotta watch that game.
He went dummy.
Crazy.
He went dummy, bro. But the Spurs pull off one of the greatest trades in their franchise history, if not the greatest, in my opinion, sending George Hill in exchange for rookie Kawhi Leonard, having their next young star in line, obviously after the big three fallout. Here's the thing. I want to say this, okay? I want to say this. If Kawhi Leonard stayed on the Pacers, I had a question for you real quick in the middle of my segment, because I was thinking about this while I was researching, and I thought about it a lot. If Kawhi Leonard stayed on the Pacers, does he ever tap into what we see Kawhi Leonard as right now?
No.
I said no too, and that's why I was so like, I don't want you to be like, what do you mean? Because you're a big Kawhi fan. What do you mean Kawhi?
Because Paul George.
But I think the Spurs saved Kawhi, like made Kawhi a superstar.
I agree. I mean, he is just such a Spurs player.
Right, exact. That's what I was thinking.
He is built for the Spurs. Not to mention the Pacers had a star at his position.
Right,
or
that's
emerging star at his position.
Like when I was looking at that trade, you could say it's so one-sided, but at the same time, like, what was Indiana going to do with Kawhi Leonard? If anything, George Hill was great for them because they went to the
shout out George Hill
conference finals. George Hill was a bucket for Indiana, right? So it's a win-win.
Don't say that.
It was though, like in situations like
at the bare minimum, Kawhi would have been a generational defender. I don't know if he would have, because it took him time with San Antonio to become a scorer. It may have taken him even longer on Indiana. Yeah. So that's what I'll say. But he would have been a generational 3-and-D role player at the very least.
Right. Okay. Yeah, fair enough.
Generational 3-and-D role player doesn't really sound, but like he would have been
sounded like prime Danny Green.
Yeah. Hey, Danny Green is like top 10 all time in playoff 3-pointers made.
Yeah.
Shout out Danny Green.
Cool. You want to do a deep dive on him? Anyway, I'm gonna quickly run through the moments the Spurs lost in the playoffs, just so you can have some context on who the competition was and why they were losing. In 2008, they lost to the Lakers in the Western Conference Finals in 5. The Lakers obviously go on to win the finals that year. 2009, they lost in the first round against Dallas in 5. 2010, they get swept by the Suns in the semifinals. 2011, they get bounced out the first round by the 8-seeded Grizzlies, and in 2012, they get bounced out by the Thunder in 6 in the Western Conference Finals.
What is so wild to me is the fact that you can have so many seasons of winning 55, 60 games and having
winning
all
culture.
These chips, and then you lose to Dallas in the first round, and then you just meet up after the game. It's like, all right, let's run it back. Like,
yeah.
How? And they did that so many times. The most notable being in 2013, which I'm going to talk about.
Yeah.
But it is just wild to me how they never really shook things up. And it was just, all right, let's get another big man to put next to Tim. Let's get another 3-and-D role player. And we're going to do the same thing over and over and over again.
This literally just wants to play in black and white.
They literally, well, I mean, the system wasn't the exact same. They played a pretty similar system.
I would argue, by the
time.
way, I mean, when we will get into it, especially in the 2014 days, I would argue the system got better as the years went on.
Did, well,
especially
2014 is
2014, the best basketball team plays.
About that,
oh my God, the best basketball team the team played.
When you talk about every team playing the best they could possibly play, it's tough to, like, if Kobe and Shaq are on, it's tough to beat that. But that Spurs team without a true superstar or true star, even at that, it might be like top 3. No one's beating that team, bro. The way they were playing,
I would give you the argument of 1.
You could say that.
I would give you the argument of 1.
I don't know how they stopped Shaq, but that I don't know, man.
I would give you the argument of 1 because it was so fluid. Like, you ever just watch highlights from the 2014? I'm done with the postseason drought, by the way. Like, they just lost and showed up again. It was just, and they never dipped below 50 wins. It was never like, there was issues in the regular season. They were a great regular season team. Even in the lockout year, they got 50 wins. Even in the lockout season, they had 50 wins. Like, there was less games to be played, and they still won 50 games.
The one time they didn't win 50 was the time where they only played 50 games. I'm pretty sure they only played 50 that year.
Imagine they went 50-0. That's such a Spurs thing to do.
But yeah, let's reminisce on the ball movement when we get to 2014. Starting with 2013 though. Tim Duncan is now 30. He's now 36 years old. He's averaging 18 and 10. This dude is just a stone at this point. Starting every game still, and just Tim Duncan playing Tim Duncan basketball. The playoff roster going into that year, I didn't have to mention it. They won 58 games. They won 58 games. The playoff roster was Tony Parker, Danny Green, Kawhi Leonard, who is in year 2, I believe.
Right.
Tim Duncan.
Right?
No, it's 2013.
2013. Sorry, apologies. 2013. Yeah, right.
Duncan at the 4, and their newest twin tower, Tiago Splitter. Shout out Tiago Splitter. Is that? Oh, that's the guy LeBron stuffed, right?
Yeah.
That block is generation. If we can show that block.
Down?
Oh my gosh, that block is nasty. They also had Boris Diaw, Matt Bonner, Gary Neal, Corey Joseph. This whole core that you like hear or feel warm about is more from 2014, but they were still together in 2013. That year, they beat the Lakers, the emerging Warriors, the Grizzlies, and the
Warriors gave them a run for their money that year too, didn't they?
I thought it was.
I remember that 2013 Warriors team was nasty to be low key. Like
they had Monte, right? It was Monte Ellis.
No. Monte was gone at that point. I believe that was the first season with Bogut.
Was he?
I believe David Lee was there. David Lee was there.
He must have been like a Buck or a Maverick. I'm trying to forget.
Yeah, he was a Milwaukee Buck in 2013, and then 2014 he went to the Mavericks.
Okay. Anyways, now we're in the finals, and the Spurs are playing the Heat, the Heatles. I think this was like the 62-win Heatles or something like that.
This was the best Heat team, yeah.
By game 6, the Spurs are up 3-2. And the last possession, the Spurs are up 3. The Heat have the ball. LeBron misses a 3. Chris Bosh rebounds. It's an offensive rebound. Passes out to Ray Allen in the corner, and they tie the game. They win in overtime. Tim Duncan was not on the floor at that time because Pop wanted better perimeter defense. And that is wild because Chris Bosh probably does not get the rebound if Timmy's out there.
Right.
And fast forward to game 7, Tim Duncan had a late game opportunity. I think it was like 40 seconds left to tie on like a pretty wide open layup. I mean, he was contested, but Tim was so much taller than everyone that he didn't have anyone blocking him. He just missed it. And that iced it for Miami. And to come off a season where, first off, you're 36 years old. You had the chance to beat one of the best teams of all time, 2013 Heat, and like just stomp LeBron's legacy. Like LeBron would have been toast. He still would have been like a great player. But could you imagine if he had lost that year to a 36-year-old Tim Duncan? The Kawhi Leonard, it was already bad enough that Kawhi was playing really good defense on him. That guy would have been like named president of the United States. Like that, if he lost to them, it would have tarnished his legacy.
Right.
Now going into 2014, I have a lot of things that I want to talk about here. I think it's your topic, so I'm going to let you go first. But the one thing I'll say, I don't know, I don't know. I'll give you the chance to say it if you have to say it, but then I'll add in anything I need to.
I go over the 2014, but it's a lot.
That was one of the most. That was one of the most heartbreaking losses in finals history.
Right.
To lose.
And then following the loss, the 2014 Spurs came out again, like we just mentioned, playing the most beautiful basketball ever played by a single team.
All right. So you're not going to say it because I don't. At least I don't think you are.
Even if you want to say it.
That preseason, like the start of training camp.
Yep.
The Spurs were forced by Pop to sit down and watch hours of Game 6 and 7 film. After they were done, Pop said, "Not a word of this anymore." So, like, anytime someone brought it up on like another team or another media, they were not allowed to talk about it. They also trained at an Air Force Academy that offseason. They were. I mean, I was watching like some Spurs documentary on this a little bit, but they were like kill mode. That's what I was going to say. Go ahead.
Well, thank you for that. I was not going to mention that, so if that helps you sleep at night. But they played the 2014 Spurs by far might be the most beautiful basketball I've ever seen played by a team. I might be a little nostalgic in saying that because that was like one of the first times I've ever seen a team move the ball that much, especially as a kid. But not only that, Kawhi was also really starting to tap into his potential, especially defensively. And the Spurs, but to everybody's surprise, finished with 62 wins that season, right? But Tim Duncan,
No way.
yeah, bro, it's insane. Tim Duncan is again showing regression this season, though, especially in the stat sheet. And this could be, you could chalk this up to him sacrificing a role, especially in 2014, because the Spurs, obviously, again, we say this over and over again, but they really take pride in team basketball. Tim Duncan is is out of everybody in the top 10 players of all time, by far the most unselfish one in that list, right? And obviously,
Steph is close. Steph's in the same realm. Absolutely.
So you put Steph top 10? I do too. But
well, I think I'm saying he's someone that people would mention when you're talking about a top 10 list.
Yeah, fair. But Tim Duncan is more unselfish than Steph.
I don't know. Steph is really unselfish. I don't want to compare.
I'm not saying he's a selfish player. I'm not saying he's selfish, but I think Tim Duncan is more unselfish than Steph.
I'm just going to put him on the same tier. I think Steph is that dude. Like, he's
fair.
There's never a problem with Steph.
Never, 100%. But for Tim, like Tim, there's again, if you go back with Steph, you might get like a little hiccup. Tim, you know what I mean? Like,
all right,
Tim.
Keep going. Yeah, I know what you
mean. Like Steph got that stuff going on with Under Armour. What did Tim do, bro? Put on a pair of Adidas. Play the same game every day. Anyway,
bro, he wore oversized jeans and a baggy
and an Old Navy dress shirt that wasn't even tailored. It wasn't even tailored for him. He was a millionaire. He didn't even tailor it.
It was like 3 sizes too big. And when he was taking the picture on the stool with the MVP trophy, I'm like, that wooden stool, that is the epitome of Tim Duncan.
But obviously, and I believe that obviously Tim Duncan played a crucial role in the success of this ring. But I think the idea that San Antonio won off of team basketball makes, or at least like, not saying he didn't have anything to do with the ring, but I think Tim Duncan had the least amount of, I don't know how to word this without making it seem like he didn't do much, because he did do a lot, obviously. But this was the least impact he had on a ring, even though he still had a lot of impact. This is Tim Duncan we're talking about, right? But obviously his last season, you had guys like Ginobili, Tony Parker stepping up, and Kawhi Leonard was stepping up. Tim Duncan could obviously take that step back. And he was the third leading scorer for them in that final series against Miami. I'm going to talk about that Miami series in a sec. He put up 15.4 points per game with 10 rebounds per game. So, I mean, he played his role. Through the first 2 games of the series, and I'm just going to jump right into the finals run here. So the first 2 games of the finals, the biggest story was the air conditioning being taken out of the Spurs stadium, and then LeBron getting those cramps. You could say it led to him having cramps. I remember everybody going off at LeBron for that, especially on social media. Like back on Facebook, they would make those memes that LeBron was a big crybaby. That was a big topic at the time. And the second game, LeBron just had the one hiccup of the Spurs. He had 35 and 10, I believe, and Miami gets away with it, and they win. They tie the series 1-1. The score is 98-96. Game 3 and 4, the Spurs just took away any hope Miami had, ripped apart, and this was the downfall of the Heatles. Game 3, they break a finals record, shooting 75.8% from the field in the first half. Timmy shot 75% for that game. I also want to note that Tim Duncan's shooting stats in that series was absolutely ridiculous. He never shot below 50% once in a single game, going 75% in game 1, 50% in game 2, which was his worst game, 75% in game 3, 100% in game 4, and 66.7% in game 5. The Spurs just absolutely tear apart the Heat. Now, you could also blame this on the fact that Dwayne Wade was nowhere to be found. Chris Bosh was nowhere to be found. It was the LeBron show, and everybody on the Heat just kind of crumbled. You could see that age was really catching up. Dwayne Wade couldn't keep up with Patty Mills and was getting locked up by Danny Green. Never thought I'd say those words in my life, but here we are on the podcast saying them. And after an embarrassing finals run for the Heat, Tim Duncan and the Spurs obviously captured their 5th ring. Kawhi walks away with the finals MVP. And this is obviously the last time that Tim Duncan puts a ring on his finger.
Yeah, so I have a couple just like fun facts that I found about this team. First off, no one on the 2014 Spurs averaged more than 30 minutes per game. Think about that.
I only looked into Tim Duncan, and I know he averaged like 28.4 or something like that, like a low number. I did not know nobody.
If you go look up the roster so you can name off the depth that played a lot, but like they had...
I did not know that.
Gary Neal and Boris Diaw, I think we're playing like above 20 minutes. Patty Mills, I'm forgetting who exactly it was, but they had it was like a 9 deep team.
Gary Neal wasn't on the 2014 team.
Was he not?
No, Marco Bellinelli was there.
Marco
Bellinelli. What a name.
Yahoo!
What a name. Dude, yeah, that's Aaron Baines was on that team. Aaron Baines was Shannon Brown played a couple games for them.
You know what's interesting about, because here's another fun
Corey
fact.
Joseph.
The Spurs at this point were taking pay cuts to pay. I'm pretty sure Thiago Splitter was making more than Manu Ginobili. I'm pretty sure. Duncan, Parker, and Manu for the 2014 season had a combined salary of $30 million. Kobe Bryant in 2014 had a salary of $30 million. The Spurs, big three, was making the same amount of money as Kobe Bryant.
Ginobili only played 22 minutes per game that season.
Yep.
Damn, I did not know that. He was playing less than half the game.
I got more stats. In 293 games, the Heat never lost 3 straight with LeBron until the Spurs in the finals. Not only did the Heat lose games 3, 4, and 5, but they lost by an average of 19 points. In those
they got destroyed.
In those games, the Spurs made 157 more passes than the Heat per game. They made 157 more passes than the Heat per game. What? That was the highest, those 3 games, or the finals, was the highest point differential in NBA Finals history. It was the biggest blowout in Finals history. Even though they lost the game, they still had the highest point differential, 70 points. That's like
to be fair, their one loss was by 2 points.
That's a whole game in 2004, 70 points.
Yeah. Yo, and it took and that one game they lost, by the way, took like a superhero LeBron performance.
Yeah, and Boris Diaw, the reason why they just steamrolled everyone is because they took Thiago Splitter out. Thiago Splitter was real good, but for the way they needed to play on offense, Boris Diaw fit better as a starter. In Game 3, they just plugged him in, and then they just dominated. And Boris Diaw's stats were not even that crazy, but if you watch the games, if you watch the 2014 Finals highlights, bro, they're just diamond. And Boris Diaw is a great passer. I really like his career is super interesting. And I don't know if you remember this in Game 5. This is when they already have a huge series lead. When Ginobili, however old he was, yammed on Chris Bosh.
Yam time.
And he ran through the whole team and just stuffed it on Chris Bosh. That is one of the best exclamation points in Finals history. Like when he did that, it was like, yeah, they're winning. Like that's it.
Yeah. And Ray Allen had that dunk too, and he was like smiling.
I do remember Ray Allen's dunk as well. The last thing I got here for Timmy is the old man years. I really think he has maybe the most perfect career in NBA history because he didn't stay too long. In fact,
but wait, let me make sure you perfect, not greatest, right? Just so people don't be like, oh, but
the most spotless.
Yes, thank you. I know what you meant, but I don't want people to be like,
yeah, this is the most spotless career. I think pretty easily. He was dominant when he first came in. Even when he averaged below 20 points one year, he averaged 32 in the playoffs. Duncan in 2015 as a 38-year-old, obviously he's regressing. He's at 14 and 9, still 2 blocks a game. He's still a good defensive anchor. Kawhi was the leading scorer at this point at 16.5 points per game. That is a wild statement to say, but this is 2015. That year they lost to the Lob City Clippers where Blake Griffin just assaulted them. He averaged 24, 13, and 7. People forget how nice prime Blake was, bro.
And that CP3 off the backboard game winner.
Yeah. That was that series?
Yep.
I do remember that shot. But Blake was tough. We got to do...
Griffin.
His Pistons years showed
Griffin.
He was so tough.
Griffin was a good one to do. That
season as well, I don't know if this is the most stacked the West has been, but this is peak 2010s West. You got the 67 win Warriors, 56-win Rockets, 56-win Clippers, 55-win Grizzlies. You might be thinking, like, how do the Spurs win 55 games and have to play the Lob City Clippers? Because they were like, that was the
West was smoke in the 2010s.
That was the 6-3 matchup.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
Or was the 4-5?
The West used to like if you couldn't get in the 50s, dude. I remember the Suns would miss the playoffs, getting like 55, 56 wins.
Dude, because the Blazers had 51, the Mavericks had 50. Like this is the West was in 2015, and that's probably not even the best it's been. The last thing I have to say is that Tim Duncan went out on a year where the Spurs won 67 games. One of the most interesting topics to me that I just love to learn about is the late years Spurs, where the old guys are kind of dying out and they have this new budding team around Kawhi Leonard that was winning 67 basketball games in an 82-game season. This is the Kawhi LaMarcus Aldridge core. They were incredibly underrated. Duncan at 39 was averaging only 9 and 7. He still started every game. But LaMarcus Aldridge and Kawhi were like serious. Kawhi won Depoy that year. First time All-Star. LaMarcus was an already established All-Star. He was also a perfect Spur, LaMarcus Aldridge. Just that kind of didn't care about his numbers, and he just went about himself.
Yeah.
They beat Memphis round 1 and lost to the Thunder in 6, who eventually, that Thunder team was real good, and they lost to the Warriors. And then Tim Duncan just rides off into the sun. He never had a retirement tour. He just kind of went about his business. It's like, oh, I'll hang him up.
And then he went and got a win as a Spurs coach one time. That one time he popped up. He had braids.
Yeah. I just saw him at the Hall of Fame ceremony with the big dreads in the back.
Yeah, or dreads, not braids. But those was I don't have anything else on Tim. This was a fun episode.
Yeah, it was a fun episode, right? I mean, we were like, oh man, we're gonna
I'd like to say that we did a good job making the Tim Duncan career interesting. It is an interesting career. Not saying he's a boring guy. Not saying he's a boring guy, but like, bro, like, did you know Robert Horry dropped the shoulder on Nash? No, probably most people did if they're old heads, to be honest. But to all the young guys out there, man, Robert Horry took out Nash.
But
no Stoudemire.
Those I really want to do an EP on. I don't know if because we already did Kawhi. That's actually a really good one, Blake.
Yeah.
But it's just so crazy to me how the Spurs were on the brink of another dynasty with Kawhi and LaMarcus. Like they could have repped out and then the 1 year where they
Zaza, man.
Dog, the Spurs were gonna pound.
If there's a player I really don't like, it's Zaza.
The Spurs could have won that series.
I don't like Zaza because of the Kawhi thing and the Westbrook beef.
I don't know. That's all I got for this EP. Shout out Tim Duncan. What a career.
Maybe Zaza's a cool guy. Maybe I'll sit down with him and have a cup of tea.
We'll talk about it. Sit down with him?
We'll talk about it. Hey, tell Zaza he can get at my people. We'll have a you know when like Magic Johnson and Isaiah Thomas sat down and they cried and shook hands? That should be me and Zaza.
I saw what you did to my favorite player a while ago. I forgive you, though.
And then Magic Johnson's like, I want to apologize. You know how Magic Johnson is? He's like, I want to apologize. You're my brother. And I'm going to sit there and be like, and I'm going to shake his hand. And there's going to be 5 Larry O'Briens in the back. Not one of them is ours. Oh, this is a great episode. A great way to end off. If you reach to the end, we appreciate you listening to the whole episode. Please make sure to show love by giving us a rating if you haven't already, giving us a Q&A response, just letting us know what you thought about the episode. Obviously, reacting to the poll. We'll have some sort of question up there for you that relates to the episode. And if you're listening through YouTube, make sure to comment and subscribe. And for everybody on Apple Podcasts, make sure to give us a rating and to obviously follow us on all platforms. We appreciate you guys for listening once again, and we will see you guys next week for our next
I got one more thing. First off, you sound like an NPC doing that. I don't know how
but
you just
I'm good at it, right?
You are. The last thing I'll say, I don't think that all that happens with Doc Rivers. I don't
know. Maybe a ring or two. Maybe a ring or two.
I don't think that happens with Doc Rivers.
Maybe a ring or two, bro. Because Popovich made some smart decisions, bro. Like a lot of it had to. Because again, the Spurs were built on team basketball, and Popovich made a lot of those team decisions. right?
Yeah.
Like Tim Duncan played his role. Tim Duncan did what Tim Duncan was supposed to do, but Tim Duncan's not the one constructing that roster. You know what I mean? Doc Rivers would not play the cards the same way that Popovich did, and Popovich understood how to build a team around Tim Duncan.
Tim don't want to listen to that voice, bro. I don't want to listen to his voice on TV.
Yeah,
Why
he was
is
supposed
he
to sign.
TV?
He was supposed to go sign with Doc Rivers in 2000 in Orlando, remember? And then Doc Rivers apparently was like, yeah, your family can't come on the plane, though, so he didn't sign with Orlando.
Wow.
Do you know about that?
I forgot.
Tim Duncan was going to sign with Orlando, and Grant Hill, Doc Rivers said it wasn't true, but, Grant Hill literally came out and said it, and T-Mac reacted to it on live TV and was pissed. But Doc Rivers, he was the coach of the Atlanta Magic at the time. Tim Duncan, it was a done deal. He was going to sign with Orlando
Tracy
that
McGrady
offseason.
was upset that they were trying
because he was because he was going to play with Tim Duncan, and Tracy McGrady found out on live TV like in 2018 when he was doing his thing that they didn't sign Tim Duncan. You didn't see that? Yeah.
No, I thought you meant
no.
Man, I
don't
want to play with Tim.
No. He was pissed because obviously they could have won rings.
Yeah.
And apparently, Doc Rivers denies it, but Grant Hill's the one who said it. Tim Duncan to Orlando Magic was a done deal, but then somebody from Tim Duncan's family said, what's your guys' policy on the family, on the team flights, like coming with you guys to fly and stuff? And they said no. And Tim Duncan's obviously a big family guy. So they lost Tim Duncan just because they didn't want to let them boys on the plane.
That is insane.
Yep.
All right, let's set it up.
Wrap it up. But we'll see you guys next week, man. Deep dive Doc Rivers coming next. Peace.